Sony WFC700N, now at $449 ringgit. Visit a Sony store today.
It's the heat you can't resist. Juiciness that fulfills your hunger desires. Now with an extra kick. Young hunger, only at McDonald's.
Guava Juice's former 200 million view months have declined by over 90%, with many of these recent views coming from shorts, as his long-form content gains roughly 100,000 views a video. What on earth happened? Let's travel back to his absolute peak. January 2017, 249 million views. Why was he so successful at this point in time? By then, Guava Juice had already been on YouTube for over 11 years, during which it became apparent that he was incredibly talented at latching onto trends and had built an intuition for what was popular on YouTube at any one time. For example, his 2007 music video parodies were similar to what Smosh had become successful with, and by 2007 music video parodies were similar to what Smosh had become successful with, and by 2007 music video parodies were similar to what Smosh had become successful with, and by 2016 he was still competing with other top-tier gaming YouTubers like Vanoss. Unfortunately, this also meant that Guava hadn't really carved out a specific lane for his channel, which is a necessity for long-term YouTube growth. Well, arguably. You can get reasonable views by joining a genre and making a contribution, however, explosive growth usually comes from pioneering a brand new or underperforming genre, as Guava Juice would come to discover in mid-2016 after uploading a video simply titled Orbeez Bath Challenge. Now, there was no denying that this video was targeted toward children. However, it still had many different elements of relatability, leading the video towards success. For example, anybody could access Orbeez, most people have a bathtub in their house, so it therefore posed this question of, well, what would be the outcome of this experiment if you did it for yourself? This made the video extremely enticing to click on, and once watching, Guava Juice then validated the audience by providing the exact outcome that everybody had clicked on the video for. A bathtub filled to the brim with Orbeez, which when combined with a cameo from Spider-Man, made for the perfect viral video. Each of Guava's bathtub uploads followed this similar premise of what would happen if you did this in your own house. There was always an element of curiosity. His Oobleck Bath Challenge even provided a guide for how to make the liquid, and it posed the question of, well, is he going to get stuck when it finally dries at the end of the video? His Lego Bath Challenge posed the question of, will he get hurt? While his Diet Coke and Mentos Bath Challenge implied that the Coke might fizz everywhere. Each episode was only 3 or 4 minutes long, so why not click and see the potential outcome? The short nature of the videos also meant that they didn't waste the audience's time and were optimized for watch time percentage. And while this goes against the classic trope of longer videos equals more watch time equals better performance, this has been disproven by people like David Dobrik, who have shown that 10 4-minute videos can be better for retention in comparison to one 40-minute video in its full entirety. Regardless, Guava Juice's videos were doing so well that even his water bath challenge cracked 5 million views.
Out of all the bath challenges I've done, I'm surprised I'd ever tried water.
Leading him to experiment with other types of content, in which he'd reveal another simple yet key success component. He was actually excited to make each video. Despite being in his mid-20s, you could tell that Guava Juice loved every piece of content, from making gummy pizzas to building a house out of red cups. This gave the videos a unique, enjoyable flavor, as it was obvious that he was happy to be there, which accompanied his cliche yet ideal philosophy of wanting to improve the content every single day.
As long as you consistently make an effort to do better every single day, things will definitely get better every single day.
However, Guava's explosion was also assisted by timing, as viral videos required significantly less time and effort back in 2017. Take for example this video titled "Do Not Jump on the Trampoline Ball Pit at 3 AM, in which the time is shown at the start of the video 3:06, as well as at the end of the video 3:29, meaning this entire episode took only 23 minutes to film. There were basically no props, no script, and the whole thing was shot shot in one take, meaning the video took only a couple of hours to complete after editing, and it's now received over 20 million views. To achieve that same kind of performance on any long-form video today requires at least 1 week's work, as well as maybe a team, maybe a budget, and even then pulling anything close to that number requires a perfect storm. Back then, however, Guava Juice was doing millions of views on every single video, almost all of which needed minimal planning and could have been completed in under a day. In the process, Guava Juice kept up with every trend from Fortnite to TikTok reactions until he'd dip his feet into a brand new video type that would take his channel to a whole new level, his 10 Things You Shouldn't Do series. In the beginning, it wasn't even supposed to be a series. However, after 10 Things You Shouldn't Do in an airplane gained a view count in the millions, Guava Juice doubled down with 10 Things You Shouldn't Do in the movie theater, 10 Things You Shouldn't Do at school, and 10 Things You Shouldn't Do on a train, each of which performing incredibly well, and it's really no wonder why. The videos were comedic, relatable, and had a bunch of effort put into them. They usually had multiple people per skit as well as a full set for every video, which made them extra unique, especially when combined with Guava Juice's absolutely insane style of comedy.
Don't be a food inspector!
Hello, my friend. How may I help you today?
Hello, I'm the food inspector. Could I have one of each food, please?
Sure thing. Follow me.
I love inspecting food.
Right this way, Mr. Food Inspector. You see, all the food should be right over there.
Hello?
Japanese people had long been known for their dedication to work. The term karoshi had been coined in the 1970s in Japan to describe deaths caused by exhaustion from overworking. However, this problem is multifaceted and cannot be attributed to one aspect of the toxic Japanese work culture. Managers pressure employees into doing tasks outside of their responsibilities, and employees are encouraged to arrive earlier than their schedule, while leaving work on time is stigmatized. Whenever there are tight deadlines, sleeping at their workplace is quite a common practice for Japanese people. Despite the negative impacts on society and the collective mental health of the Japanese workforce, this morbid tradition is continually practiced to this day, causing some people to fall so far off the rails that they commit suicide. In 1999, the combination of negligence, corporate greed, and complete disregard for worker safety will have caused the unimaginable suffering of one man. On the morning of September 30th, 1999, nuclear power plant technicians Hisashi Ochi, his colleague Masato Shinohara, and their supervisor, Yutaka Yukokawa, go through their usual route. They arrive at the Takemura nuclear power plant for another day of work. At this point in Japanese history, reliance on nuclear energy was growing. Japan realized its lack of natural resources, so it depended approximately 80% of its energy on imports. Remarkably, almost 90% of crude oil was supplied by the Middle East to them. However, Due to the oil crisis of the 1970s, the government of Japan decided to branch out into different forms of energy to sustain a growing economy that's smack dab in the middle of industrialization. Hence, the crucial demand for nuclear energy. The Takamura nuclear power plant was the first nuclear power plant established in Japan. One of its facilities was for repurposing uranium hexafluoride into uranium dioxide. Eventually, the uranium will be further processed into fuel rods that other nuclear plants and nuclear reactors will use. This particular facility was owned by the Japan Nuclear Fuel Conservation Company, JCO. Ochi, Shinohara, and Yokokawa proceeded with their usual morning routine. One of the responsibilities of a nuclear plant technician like Hisashi is to oversee the mixing of uranium. The reprocessing of uranium has 3 crucial steps. Firstly, the dissolution tank. A mixture of uranium powder at the maximum concentration of 5% and nitric acid is mixed here. Secondly, the buffer tank. This tank is shaped cylindrically to help prevent the uranium from reaching accidental criticality, an accidental nuclear fission chain reaction. This tank also helps control the drip of uranium into the third and last step, the precipitation tank, which is surrounded by a water cooling jacket to help remove excess heat from the reaction. Here, the final mixing of the uranium is done carefully. 3 years prior to that fateful day in September, JCO's officials decided to experiment by skipping a few steps to hasten the production of this highly dangerous material due to demand and pressure. In response to this demand, JCO wrote in their official procedure that the uranium powder can be mixed in the stainless steel bucket by hand. Albeit illegal, no incidents have occurred since the approval of the procedure, so it wasn't taken seriously. Additionally, to make matters worse, JCO was behind schedule with the production of fuel rods at the time. Pressured by JCO, the technicians decided to go even further with the already hastened process. This is where things started to go downhill. At approximately 10:35 a.m., Ochi and Shinohara mixed the uranium powder in stainless steel buckets, but instead used 7 times more than the allowed concentration limit. Ochi draped his body inside the precipitation tank and assisted Shinohara, who stood on a platform to pour the mixture. Suddenly, the gamma radiation alarms sounded. Ochi, Shinohara, and Yokokawa knew they had made a terrible mistake. A flash of blue light was reportedly seen by the 3. This is called Cherenkov radiation, where blue light is emitted when the electrons are moving faster than the speed of light on a specific medium. Massive amounts of energy are released and a shockwave, similar to a sonic boom from supersonic planes, is generated. This confirms that an uncontrolled nuclear chain fission reaction happened and was buffering the room with lethal doses of gamma particles. Ochi, who was closest to the blast, received the highest dose, while Shinohara, who stood on the platform, received the second highest dose. Yokokawa, who was 4 meters away from the tank and was behind the computer, received the lowest dose. The regulatory dose limit for people who are occupationally exposed is 20 to 50 millisieverts, MSV per year. The 3-man crew received a combination of more than 30,000 millisieverts in less than a few minutes. Ochi received a whopping dose of 17,000 millisieverts, while Shinohara and Yokokawa received 10,000 and 3,000 millisieverts, respectively. The 3 men fled immediately. However, none of them were able to get very far. Ochi and Shinohara immediately felt searing pain all over their bodies, as they quickly became nauseous and short of breath. Yokokawa also felt the effects, albeit slightly less extreme. Ochi enters the locker room where he vomits and passes out on the floor. The plant was immediately cleared out to control the damage and prevent the other workers from getting exposed. Ochi, Shinohara, and Yokokawa were taken to the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Chiba. However, because of the severity of Ochi's case, he was quickly sent to the University of Tokyo Hospital, where there are more qualified staff and modern equipment to handle the treatment and process. On the evening of September 30th, Ochi arrived at the University of Tokyo Hospital and was received by the medical staff. Strangely, Ochi seemed fine and went through the usual protocols like any other patient in the hospital. He was brought up on a stretcher and taken to a private room in the ICU. One of the nurses attended to him there. She noted that aside from a swollen arm and seemingly only sunburnt skin, Ochi seemed fine and was in high spirits. Another nurse commented that he actually might be able to go home later. Unbeknownst to them, this was the beginning of one of the most horrific deaths in history. After learning that Ochi was in a nuclear plant accident, the medical staff conducted a micrograph of his bone marrow to really hone in on the problem. What they learned from the results filled them with dread, and the doctors knew then that Ochi's case was no simple workplace-related incident. The human body has countless cells that die, but are shed and replaced throughout time. This is facilitated by the chromosomes in our body, which contains the blueprint for the repairing process. Without the chromosomes' functionality, a person simply cannot survive. Ochi's chromosomes were so badly damaged from the radiation blast that samples of it looked like a mesh of soup. Some of it broke into pieces like glass, scattering into various directions, and could hardly be identified. Some were fused together abnormally. The blueprint for cell replication and repair simply wasn't there anymore, and the chromosomes were rendered useless. The doctors could not believe what they were seeing. If the damage is apparently that severe, why is it that according to the nurses, Ochi seemed fine and in high spirits even? The doctors agreed that Ochi was in the walking ghost phase, which is a period of health that may last for hours or days, depending on the body's reaction to radiation poisoning. Before the radiation blast, Ochi's cells were still functional, so whatever health he apparently showed upon his arrival at the hospital will be short-lived once the radiation poisoning becomes an effect. Simply put, he was a ticking time bomb, and Ochi's nightmarish suffering was about to begin. Beside losing the functionality of his chromosomes, Ochi's white blood cell count stooped dangerously low, making him susceptible to infections. To remedy this, the chief physician handling Ochi's case, Dr. Kazuhiko Miyakawa, ordered him to be moved into a sterile room where he can be constantly shielded from outside pathogens and bacteria. With the possibility of infections out of the way, Dr. Miyakawa recognized that to give Ochi a fighting chance at survival, they needed to supply his body with an influx of healthy chromosomes so that it can be coaxed to replicate cells and repair itself again. Dr. Miyakawa decided to try an experimental treatment for cancer called hematopoietic stem cell transplant. This treatment will require the harvesting of healthy bone marrow cells from a donor, which will then be transplanted into Ochi. The healthy cells will make their way into Ochi's bone marrow and ideally should allow it to produce healthy cells of its own again. The only caveat to this highly advanced treatment at the time is that the donor must be a good match for Ochi's immune system. Fortunately, Ochi's sister was deemed a good match by the doctors, and so the procedure was undertaken. Although helpful, Ochi's family was anxious that Ochi was the first recipient of this treatment in the world. Knowing full well the damage done by the radiation to Ochi's body, Dr. Miyakawa made sure that the family was able to see Ochi on a daily basis. He realized that any false hopes would make the already difficult situation more problematic. Dr. Miyakawa was not idealistic about the situation and wanted Ochi's family to accept the worst-case scenario as early as now. Meanwhile, Ochi did not seem to understand the gravity of his situation. One nurse noted that Ochi stated, "I thought I'd be able to leave the hospital in a month or so, but it's going to take longer, isn't it?"